Hello there, my name is Paul Mountain. You're very welcome to my world of stuff. Today I'm doing something slightly different, slightly off message from the stuff that I usually do on this channel, because I'm going to be talking about Line of Duty, because, well, everybody else is at the moment. And normally, of course, on this channel I talk about geeky stuff, my books and films and DVDs, and films and so on, but I think it is the TV show du jour, as they say at the moment. Rosie here is trying to get a face in the picture, by the way. I might let her come across in a moment. But I thought, in the light of the finale of Season 6 was screened on BBC One last night, I'd just do a little chat about the series and my own particular thoughts about the way the show has ended and what it's achieved over its 6-series run, and whether it has a future. Now, it was the finale of the show last night. In case you don't know Line of Duty 1, where the hell have you been? This is the police anti-corruption show created by the extremely talented Jed Mercurio, which debuted on BBC Two in 2012, and indeed its first 3 series grew in popularity and acclaim on BBC Two before it moved to BBC One for its 4th series, and since the 4th series it's just become this juggernaut of television, this huge genuine phenomenon, a show with massive ratings, which was seeding all sorts of mysteries and laying lots of clues about the whole concept of police corruption, and the particular story about this fictional anti-corruption unit, which is called AC-12. I don't know what happens to ACs 1 to 11. That's never touched on the programme. And the dedicated work of its core team of investigators, led by Martin Compston as Steve Arnott, Vicky McClure as Kate Fleming, and their commanding chief, who's played brilliantly by Adrian Dunbar, Superintendent Ted Hastings. Now, this is a show completely out of my wheelhouse. I don't normally do police detective shows. I find the British public and TV networks' obsessions with police and detective shows a little baffling. I know that historically Britain has always been fascinated by the work of the police and detectives and murders and so on, but I just find it all a bit sort of a bit samey. I like something a bit more outlandish, and I always have. But Line of Duty is one of those shows that did capture my imagination, and I did watch the first. Well, I've seen all of it. I've seen the whole 6 series, and the whole show seemed to come to a bit of a culmination in the final, the 7th episode of season 6, which aired on BBC One last night. I'm sure you know about the series. You know what it's been doing all these years, and it's been seeding individual examples, or telling stories of individual examples of police corruption, right back to its first season, with officers played by the likes of Lenny James, Stephen Graham, and the brilliant Keeley Hawes, who've all delivered terrific performances, and of course Tandy Newton in a series of a few series back. Excuse the traffic, it's nuts here, it always is. But behind the scenes, there's always been these suggestions of a mysterious 4th man in this strange police corruption conspiracy, the mysterious H. And of course, across several series, we were led to believe that this could perhaps be Ted Hastings, but that seemed a bit obvious. This series, it seemed as if we were going to get answers, and I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of the plots for 2 reasons. One, I haven't always followed a lot of it, because it is quite convoluted and labyrinthine, and we will know the show's history of dropping in these acronyms and things which have baffled the audiences. But it's always been a very pacey, intriguing series, dominated by these 3 main characters who really carried the narrative across these 6 series. And I think that as this series has gone on, we sort of understood, or we appreciated that we were going to get a conclusion to this arc that's been building up. Because I think it's quite right, if you build a sort of a mystery about the identity of a character or a villain, there's only so long you can keep that going before the audience gets exasperated. Just tell us who it is. So I think that Jed Mercurio was right to sort of bring that to a conclusion in this season. When I watched the finale last night, my first feeling, and there are spoilers by the way if you haven't seen the episode, that the mysterious H all along was an officer called Ian Buckles, played by an actor called Nigel Boyle, I think, who I hadn't even appreciated that he'd been in previous series, because he slipped into this series as this incompetent commander of a unit that Kate Fleming had apparently transferred to. And this is the thing with Line of Duty, because the series are fairly short, 6-7 episodes, and it's been running for 9 years. The series are, there's couple of years in between seasons. I haven't revisited them. I can't remember the intricate beats of the characters, and I think to really appreciate the series you need to know the ins and outs. You need to be a real expert. You need to keep your tabs on who's who and who's been doing what. So I didn't really appreciate this character had been around right since the beginning of the show. And I think that the initial revelation that he was H was a big disappointment, and I'm looking online at comments today on Facebook and on Twitter, people expressing huge disappointment. But with the distance of a few hours and thinking about it, I think that it was actually quite a brave decision to give the series, or this series, whether it's the series or the whole series, this sort of downbeat ending. It was quite a clever trick by Jed Mercurio, because previous series finales have been a bit explosive and a bit, action thriller. There's been shootouts and, lots of, big dramatic things going on, but this is much more downbeat. And I think it suits the subject matter of the series. The more I think about it, the more I think it was probably quite a satisfying finale. And sorry, I'm obsessed with my hair sticking up. And I actually hope now that this is the end of the series, because I like the bittersweet ending. There are some loose ends. There are suggestions that the show isn't over, as we know in this series. One of the parts of the storyline that came to pass a couple of episodes ago was that Ted Hastings, played by the brilliant Adrian Dunbar, was being retired. And the suggestion that there's corruption in the senior ranks, such as the officer Patricia Carmichael, played so brilliantly by Anna Maxwell Martin, and in fact the chief of the entire police, played by Owen Teale. There's always been some suspicious sort of undertones about them being behind things and manipulating things. And what I like about the series is that it ends with those things still there. So I think that the finale, in fact, delivered not what we were expecting, but I think it's possibly for the better for the series, because we're used to drama series where everything's tied up nicely, there are no loose ends, everybody goes off to live the rest of their lives and the situation is resolved. But in Line of Duty, the situation isn't resolved, as the captions at the end told us what happened to certain characters and what's happened to the whole unit. AC-12 has been not exactly disbanded, but reduced in capacity and efficiency. We assume that Ted Hastings has taken his resignation, even though there was a telling line in the final episode that he was going to appeal against it, which leaves the door open should he come back in some capacity. But I quite like the idea that it leaves things with the suggestion that after all this time and all the battles that they fought against corruption and the bad coppers that they've reeled in, the bent coppers, that in the end they were beaten, and that the corruption went higher than they could reach and had more influence than they could cope with. And I quite liked, the show was very good at doing these dramatic scenes of people looking out behind corners and standing on steps and looking down at people. And there's this hugely dramatic scene with our three main characters in a lift with the camera pulling away. It's a beautifully directed series and it looks very dramatic for a British show, and it's our three characters who sort of knowing that they've been outmanoeuvred, if you like, and knowing that their work isn't finished. And that's the interesting thing, because the series sort of tied up this huge 6-season arc, but leaves certain plot threads hanging that can be picked up if the show continues. Now, I sort of hope it doesn't, because I like the idea of a story not ending in a completely positive manner. They've had their victories across the series, but in the end the corruption runs so deep that they couldn't bring it all down. They couldn't get to the very top, and even though they found the fourth man, it turns out that he too was pretty much a puppet being manipulated by someone else, someone much higher, whether it was Anna Maxwell Martin's character or Owen Teale's character. And I quite like the fact that it leaves us in no uncertain terms that corruption is rife in this fictional world of the police. I'm not suggesting that it is in the real world of the police, but in Line of Duty's fictional world, corruption is rife, it's untouchable, and despite everything that these three have done within AC-12, it's still there. They haven't beaten it, and I quite like that sort of downbeat thing. It's nice to have an ending which isn't all sweetness and light and roses and happy ever after. I think it leaves open the possibility, well, two possibilities. The show's been such a huge hit that the BBC will want more, and they will certainly want more. If not Line of Duty, they'll want more from Jed Mercurio and more from these characters. Now, whether that means they're going to be a spin-off of some sort with these characters again tackling police corruption from the outside, whether that line from Ted Hastings suggests that he actually gets his job back and carries on and business as usual, but then it does sort of say that AC-12 is diminished. So I don't know. I really don't know. In my heart, I'd like it to finish there. I'd like it to end there. I'd like the whole story to end there with this sort of bittersweet moment of Pyrrhic victory, if you like. The reality of television, of course, is that TV channels, especially in this multi-channel age, they love success and they want success, and this has been putting in 13 million viewers for the BBC, and that just doesn't happen these days. So it's not a show that they're going to let rest. But then Jed Mercurio is one of TV's creatives with some respect for his work and his audience, and I don't think he'll plod on and on and on, and it seems hard to think how you reopen this particular box of worms. Now it's been sealed up, if not completely closed. So although my initial reaction was that I was a little bit disappointed by the slightly underwhelming nature of the finale, I think now, stepping back, it makes sense in terms of the whole reach of the series across these 10 years, that it ends in this slightly open-ended fashion. There's nothing wrong with that. And I say I haven't touched much in terms of the storylines, because they've sort of snaked across these 6 series, and there's so much that intertwines, and I think it's a show that probably now will benefit from a rewatch. Maybe at some point I'll find the time, because God knows it's hard enough to watch the shows that are new that come along. But I think it would benefit from a rewatch, and it would be nice to think that the clues are there in the early episodes to where this all ends. So it's difficult when a show that you enjoy ends. You miss it and you want more, but you think, well, it's ended in a nice place, perhaps I should leave it there. And that's sort of how I feel at the moment. So why not let me know what you think? I know this, as I say, it's an unusual topic for this channel, because it's normally superheroes and spaceships and monsters, and all points in between, but I think this has been such an important, phenomenal show, and I have watched it since the beginning. I felt I wanted to just do a little wrap up and to see what their thoughts. So what did you think of the finale? What did you think of the whole series? Do you think it's right to leave it here? Do you think they should reopen it and go back in? Or do you think there should be some spin-off? I just can't imagine that the BBC will want this left as it is. But then Jed Mercurio, being a writer of integrity, he might well say, well, look, I've told this story. I'm sure the BBC will jump at anything else he comes up with. But I think there's a nice feeling of some sort of finality, a sort of unsatisfactory finality to the series, which I think I quite like in television, because you don't often get that. So anyway, why not tell me what you thought? Do you A, not give a damn because there's no monsters in it? Do you B, think that there's a story left to be told and season 7 is inevitable? Or C, do you think that there's other stories to be told with these characters but in a different format? Or D, are you just feeling hungry and we should not bother watching this video? Leave a message down below, let me know what you think. If you think, do you think? I don't know, it's hard to think. So let me know what you thought, and I'll be back with more traditional stuff very soon. But until then, keep taking the stuff.